Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. Guys, what was the Canadian Grand Prix? It was overwhelming almost. There was so much happening. I think my favourite race of the season, not only on track but off track, all of the media moments we have to talk about. Last week I was complaining about there not being enough media moments for me to talk about, and this week definitely have too much to talk about. But first we'll settle in with the riddle of the week. I came up with this riddle so long ago that I honestly can't remember what rhythm I'm supposed to read it in, but I'll try anyway. Okay. I race in silver with a star known worldwide, a blend of Finnish and German pride. My dad was a champ, I followed his track, battled a friend turned rival in many a racing pack. In 2016, I reached the top, then left the scene, retired swiftly after my greatest dream. Now in business and TV, still near the race, who am I, the champ who left at a fast pace? I feel like I got the rhythm of that wrong, but I think you should be able to know who it is anyway. Like always, I'll tell you the answer and the story behind the person at the end of today's episode. Like I said, we actually do have quite a lot to talk about today. We have a lot of media moments even before the chaos of the Canadian Grand Prix happened. A few contract renewals, termination, I guess. So let's talk about that. We'll start with Perez. Was he first? No, it was Ocon first. If you somehow missed it, Esteban Ocon is leaving Alpine at the end of this year. This obviously came after his crash or his little moment with Pierre Gasly, his teammate in Monaco. The team weren't very happy with him. Famin said that there would be consequences, and there has appeared to be consequences. Now, there's no way this was decided just because of Monaco, but it could have been a pushing point for the team to decide that they wanted to go with someone else for Alpine. I think it's quite an odd decision. I know Esteban, and I mean, I talked about this last week. I don't know if I really want to talk about it again, but I know Esteban has at times clashed with his teammates, being Alonso and Pierre, but he is a good driver. And he is at the same level, in my opinion, as Pierre. So to fire a driver at the same level as the driver you were keeping is quite confusing. But then again, they might know more than me. Obviously, if they are looking to maybe get Jack Doohan in, it might be that they want to give a rookie a chance. They might want to just see if someone could be as good as Ocon but cause less accidents. Just saying this sort of what I said last week. Obviously, last time I said it, I didn't realise he was going to get fired. But apparently, Haas is looking like a really promising option for Ocon. They mentioned it in his post-race press yesterday. And it would have been an important race for Ocon to prove himself to other teams. I mean, every race for the rest of the season is vital for Ocon, not for Alpine, or not vital for Ocon to impress Alpine because it's too late now, but vital for Ocon to impress all the other teams. So Haas is looking like a good option. And this week, the rumours about Ollie Behrman going to Haas has also strengthened a lot. A lot of people thought it would be announced on Saturday, I think, but it was Yuki's announcement instead, which I will get on to. But right now, there is only one free seat at Haas, with Nico Hülkenberg going to Sauber. So is Magnussen gone? Would Magnussen go somewhere else? I mean, obviously, Magnussen, good driver, a bit on the dangerous side, a bit chaotic, to be honest, on the track. Quite a few penalty points. He still needs to avoid getting any, or else he'll get a race ban. Is he gone? That hasn't even, I don't think it's been talked about that much, Magnussen's position on the grid next year. But if Haas are looking at Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman, it's not looking too good. And to be honest, Ollie Behrman doesn't really need to prove himself that much right now because he already did in the Ferrari. And obviously it's a Ferrari that he was driving, but they know he can drive, you know? That's what they need to know. They need to know he can drive a Formula 1 car. He can keep up with the others, and he proved that. So I think it's safe to say Behrman is getting that Haas seat. But it is interesting who will be partnering up with Behrman. Do you think Ocon deserves to be in Formula 1? I think he's definitely talented enough. He's been here quite a while, but he's kept up with his teammates his entire career, to be honest. Obviously, he's had his dips sometimes, but yeah, I think getting fired for him would be quite a knock to his confidence and quite surprising. I really wasn't expecting Ocon to get fired. this year. I really wasn't. And I know that they labelled it as parting ways with Alpine, but if you remember, that's how McLaren also labelled it when they fired Daniel. And Daniel, in his interviews after was talking about getting fired and everything like that. So also a strange move from Alpine considering the position that they're in right now with like most of their staff leaving for other teams or just leaving in general. So the last thing that I thought they would be doing is actually firing people, but maybe they just want to regroup, rebuild, start from the start, Anyway, slightly more positive news for Checo, Sergio Perez, who signed a contract with Red Bull. There was a bit of confusion over the contract because initially it was said 2 years and then Christian said 1 year and then changed it to 1+1. So a year and then the option to continue. And we will talk about Perez's weekend and his last couple of weekends too. But it's quite positive for Sergio to get that contract signed. It would have been weighing on his mind, especially if he hadn't got a contract signed after this weekend. He would have probably be feeling a lot worse than he is. Not a great weekend for anyone who actually signed a contract when you think of it, actually. But yeah, I think Sergio Perez's contract came to a surprise to some, not to others. Personally, I think, not right now, he's not on form. That's obvious. But usually when he is on form, he's never at the same level as Max, but that's what Red Bull need. They don't need two Maxes on the team. They just need someone who can bring up enough points to secure them the constructors as well and not get in the way of Max's championship. If you have two drivers too similar in talent with each other, they clash. Just look at Pierre and Esteban, Daniel and Max in 2018. I mean, you see how risky it can be with Carlos and Charles as well, how close they come together sometimes. Red Bull don't want that. Perez at his best is a perfect person to partner up Red Bull with. No drama, good sponsors. But obviously they need him at his best because right now, when the wins aren't like last year, when it's not certain that Red Bull are going to win, when it's not certain that Max is going to win, they need those points from Jacko and the constructors, or else McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes could creep up on them faster than they expect. So yeah, that 2-year contract might turn into a 1+0 if Checo doesn't get back in his game, but I think he will. I think he just needs to reset. So much of Formula 1 that you wouldn't realise is psychological. A few of the drivers have spoken about it. If you're not going into the race weekend in the right mindset, no matter how fast your car is, you're not going to do well. So maybe he's just had his confidence knocked a bit and he just needs to get back on his feet. And then one final signing of a contract, Yuki Tsunoda on Saturday signed for 1 more year with RB. It was earlier in the week revealed that he doesn't have the option to leave, that Red Bull want to stop him from going to any other teams, and with how Yuki's doing, he's definitely going to be satisfying for other teams. Other teams are going to want him. But the announcement of his contract extension was very rushed. It came out of nowhere. There was no hype built. There was no clues that RB would be announcing anything that weekend, which leads me to believe that they didn't plan it. They didn't plan to announce anything like that this weekend, and that something pushed them to announce it. And my thoughts is that this has to be related to Carlos Sainz. And I think Carlos has committed to Williams. Seba is out of the picture now, Audi, and they are looking for another driver. They're going to be looking for another one, and Yuki could have been a potential great candidate for that. So RB might have wanted to lock him in before he chose to leave. That's just a guess. That's just an opinion. That might not be the case at all. Maybe they just wanted to slowly announce Yuki, but also in the midst of the Daniel hate train that's going on, probably wouldn't have been the best time to announce Yuki, and I think RB would have been aware of that, so I do think something pushed them to announce it this weekend. And I'm happy that Yuki has secured another year. I'm not surprised at all. Could he thrive somewhere else? He's been in AlphaTauri, Visa Cash App, whatever, for quite a while. I would love to see how he does somewhere else. It's obvious that Red Bull aren't going to promote him. He's not going to be a Red Bull driver. They're not going to promote him. They had the perfect opportunity to this year with how he's performing. His loyalty might not be in the right place. But obviously Honda, you know how it is. At least we get another year definitely with Yuki on the grid. Not that that's a surprise. Jack Doohan got a free practice session, although it was raining basically the entire thing. I actually don't know if he got out. Did he get out? I think he got out for an out lap and maybe didn't do a push lap. That's so unfortunate. Also, not great timing to have Jack doing in the week Esteban gets fired just for like rumour mill, you know. But also it makes sense for Alpine to want to test their reserve driver. I think it's more than likely Jack Doohan would be one of the main ones in consideration for that seat. I would love to see Jack in Formula 1. What other media moments do we have? Daniel had a new helmet this weekend. I know that faced a lot of controversy, but he had a maple syrup helmet. It looked like someone just poured maple syrup on top of like a white helmet, but I sort of loved it, and it had like a brand logo of him. Can't remember what it said, but it was funny anyway. But the commentators seem to have a problem with special helmets all of a sudden. That Daniel's done one this week. They were like, if you're not performing well, you shouldn't have a special helmet. Basically, I can't even remember what they said because I didn't rewatch it after the first time. I think you should be allowed to have a special helmet no matter how you are doing in Formula 1. They're fun. It lets the drivers be creative, have a little fun at the weekend. Like, why do they have to be miserable just because they're not winning? Or they're not in contention to winning, you know? Just didn't really make sense to me. I hope Daniel brings another special helmet for Barcelona. Actually, maybe he should have a special helmet for every single race of the year. Will we stay on the line of Daniel? Because this is something I am going to talk about. Unfortunately, the main topic of conversation about Daniel this weekend was about what Jacques Villeneuve said about him in an interview, basically with Sky this weekend. I haven't watched the interview since I saw it live the first time because it just sort of annoyed me, to be honest. And I know I always say I'm not going to speak about anyone negatively on my podcast, but I'm also going to share my mind. And I'm just going to share my thoughts on it. And that's it. Because if someone is channeling that much negativity into another person, I feel like you have the right to speak negatively about them, to be honest. First of all, I don't think what he said was completely true. From my memory, I'm not going to encourage people to watch the interview back because it was just sort of dumb. But from my memory, he said, in the past 5 years, Daniel hasn't been good. That's not true. 2021, 2022, Daniel wasn't good. I mean, he won one of those years, but for the rest of that, he wasn't good. And that's the truth. He wasn't the Daniel anyone knew. He was struggling a lot mentally during them years as well. And he just wasn't a great Formula 1 driver. 2023, Daniel was good, but he had immense bad luck. He didn't have a great season, he had a good season. Not that he got a season, he got like a handful of races after he broke his hand. But think back to 2023, yeah? He broke his hand for one of the races. Other race, he got whacked in either the rear wing, I think, by a flying tyre on the opening lap, which ruined his entire race. He got crashed into in the first lap from behind, I think, by Joe, potentially, all in different races. Not only did he miss, like, how many races did he miss? Like 4 or something because of his broken wrist. He also, that's 2 ruled out right there for things that have nothing to do with Daniel. And then the floor setup and everything in Abu Dhabi ruined any chance he had of doing well there. And then he did well in the other ones. Like, he was on par with Yuki. He wasn't better than Yuki. But to say that he was a bad driver that year is not true. And the crash that broke his hand was because he had to crash to avoid hitting into Oscar. Obviously, he didn't take his hand off the steering wheel, and that's on him because, you know, it was a very fast-paced movement. But doesn't make him a bad driver. So, yeah, the last 5 years is what? To 2019? What year is it? 2024, 23, 22, 21, 2020. And I mean, if you think Daniel was a bad driver in 2020, you weren't watching Formula 1 because he was nailing that Renault every single weekend. He got 2 podiums in a car that was not a podium car. He bet his teammate by quite a significant margin, and he just had a great season overall. You didn't watch, I mean, it was the COVID season, it wasn't full out, but you didn't watch him properly if you didn't think he had a good season in 2020. 2019, he was getting on his feet in Renault, but he still had a good season. Like, it wasn't the best, but he was driving well enough to deserve to be in Formula 1 then, and he still is now. Well, okay, we'll talk about 2024 quickly. The main critic of Daniel's season in 2024 is Daniel himself. He's said multiple times he hasn't been good enough this year, he hasn't been consistent enough, He hasn't had a great year so far. He definitely hasn't, but he's getting there, you know. He qualified P4 and finished P4 in the sprint. He has had a lot of bad luck if you've actually been focusing on his season as well. Most of the people who are speaking about how bad he's doing couldn't tell you how any of his races have actually went. And then there's some things where he just qualified bad, and that's on him, and he needs to get a grip on that. Another thing he said was that his season against Max, or his seasons, wasn't that impressive, something along those lines. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Max was young back then. He wasn't at the talent he is now because he didn't have that experience. And because of that, you can't use the Daniel Bet and a world champion sort of excuse there because Max is just starting off. But you can't use the fact that Max was only just behind Daniel as an excuse to say that Daniel's season wasn't good. Because take away a lot of Formula 1 is to do with how they do against their teammates, but just take that away from a second and just look at Daniel's season, okay? Let's talk about 2018. One of the most unlucky seasons I've ever seen for a driver. He had an incredible amount of DNFs that were nothing to him, that were car failures. Obviously, he had Baku, which was both his and Max's fault, but he had an incredible season. He got his pole in Mexico and Monaco. He got his win in Monaco. He had one of his best wins. My favourite win of his, China 2018, the overtake in the masterclass. He had that overtake at Baku when he got like the 3 cars in a row. He had an incredible season, but the car was so unreliable and he left Red Bull because he just wanted to finish a race. I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons he probably left Red Bull, but the car was so unreliable, and for him to still do that well in it, like, how can you not think that's impressive? How can you discredit him for that? I don't understand. Same with the rest of his career. I know there's comments on how it's not that impressive that he bet Sebastian Vettel because Seb was tired or something like that. Like, what does that even mean? He still bet Sebastian Vettel. Seb still labels him as one of his best rivals that he's lost to. When you have Lewis and Seb and all these incredible drivers talking about how talented it is to race against Daniel, when you've Nico Rosberg, a world champion, saying that the one driver they would never wanted to be pit out with is Daniel because if you're behind him, you're not getting past him, and if you're in front of him, you're getting overtaken by him. These people aren't saying that because they like his personality. These people are saying that because he's a talented driver and that has went downhill. I'm not an idiot. I know that Daniel currently is not at the form that he was back in Red Bull, back in Renault. But he shows that every now and again. He shows that he has that talent. The one problem he has is consistency. He's not consistent at all, and he needs to prove that he can be consistent. And if he is consistent with how he did this weekend, with how he did in Miami, that's like an incredible level to be at. And also, the gap between Yuki and Daniel in qualifying is like the second or third smallest on the entire grid. But it's just because Daniel probably has had more worse moments than Yuki because Yuki's having an incredible season, let's be honest. Also, God forbid Daniel has a personality. Like, God forbid during his McLaren days when he was severely depressed and when he was going through the worst time of his life, God forbid he wanted to make people laugh and he interrupts interviews to make other drivers smile. And so the thing that he isn't remembering about that weekend is his results, and it's that he had fun, because you can't seriously think that Daniel would be a better driver if he was like boring, if he didn't have a personality. That's not how it works. Daniel had that personality during his Red Bull days when he was at his best. He had that personality when he was at his worst. And he's toned back on his personality as well, which he shouldn't have to do this year. You have to notice that Daniel has been more quiet even. He's been more, I guess, mature. Maybe he is just maturing a little, but I don't think he should ever feel the need to change his personality because people feel that he is not talented enough to be funny, or he's not talented enough to have a special helmet. Anyway, I was in need of a rant about that for a while since I saw the comments, and they're still going. He doesn't like that Daniel clapped back at his comments. Daniel told him to eat the S word, which I think is fair, to be honest, because if someone spoke about me like that to millions of people on Sky, I would be saying a lot worse. And I think Daniel got under his skin with that and not the other way around. Yeah, that's my Daniel rant over for a few minutes at least. Some upgrades on the cars. Mercedes had a new front wing. Obviously that showed on George's car because what a weekend from George at pole. Lewis was so strong all weekend as well. In free practice he was so strong. Through qualifying, obviously he had a bit of dip towards the end of qualifying, but still, and he had a great race as well. Recovery a bit, made up a few places. George obviously struggled a bit. He had a few mistakes in the race. Anyway, so yeah, we'll talk more about the racing, will we? Not too much to report from free practice. Obviously, free practice 1, raining. Jack Doohan, so unfortunate for him not to get any of that running time. For my FP3 notes, I wrote Stroll plus Daniel fire, and I don't know what that means, to be honest. I don't remember there being a fire. Fire. Maybe I just meant they were on fire. Were they really good in FP3? I can't remember. I don't know. I always say it, I need to write a bit more, like, notes. I need to actually say more. Lewis, I wrote strongest. Lewis was so strong in FP3. I really, really thought he was going to get pole. Well, I really wanted him to get pole. I just want to see him on that podium again. But it is looking better for Mercedes. It really is. And I think it won't be too long before we see Lewis on the podium. Quali. What happened to Perez, guys? Out in Q1 again. He's had 3 bad qualifyings in a row. I think he's been out-qualified by both Orbis, Daniel and Yuki, 3 times in a row, maybe. And I don't even know what happened because there wasn't an issue with the car. I think Helmut might have said it might have just been a psychological thing, like I said earlier. But that's not good enough for Perez. And I know if anyone is disappointed in that performance, it is Perez because he always wants to do his best. It is sad to see him not at that right now, but there is still a long season to go. There's probably still like 14 or something races left. Probably something like that, an insane amount. I wouldn't write off him just yet. And Perez wasn't the only surprise elimination. Charles and Carlos out in Q2. What happened there even? The Ferrari was not on it. Ferrari said, you know what, you can have Monaco and you don't get a single thing in Canada. You actually get a horrific weekend. Because what was that? They weren't fast, they didn't have the pace. Is it the rain that they can't drive in? I don't think so. I think the car just sort of gave up on them this weekend, to be honest. He put in too much effort last weekend. Or she. I think most of them call the car she. Ferrari car needed a break this weekend. Maybe he'll be back next weekend. Barcelona, Carlos's home race. The Spanish Grand Prix. Actually, no, when is Madrid coming in? 2026, so it's not the last year of Barcelona. Is Barcelona leaving the calendar? I think Barcelona is leaving, right, when Madrid comes. Has that been announced? I don't know. I don't actually know. I feel like I made a video on that before though. Yuki was looking really... I'm not gonna lie, I really thought Yuki might like clinch a top 3 in qualifying. He was so strong through the first Q1 and Q2 and in free practice as well. Daniel was a bit stronger in free practice, but Yuki was stronger throughout the start of qualifying when it actually mattered. But Daniel just clinched on to P5. Very impressive. Orbi's highest qualifying position for a Grand Prix this season, and their highest sprint position is P4, which was Daniel as well. And Yuki P8, still a great result. And then the most exciting part of the entire qualifying session, pole position goes to George Russell, who at the exact same time as Max Verstappen. They had, was it 12 on the dot? I think 12.000. And because George set his time first, he got pole. I would have thought it would be the second person to set their time for some reason because, you know, like the closest it is to the end of the session, but that's not the rules anyway. But I love that. I love that. And the way, was it Ted that was saying that someone knows who actually had the fastest time, but they don't count it after whatever it is, after the 100th or whatever. I want to be the person who knows that, just to keep that to myself. Not that it matters. But also, if you watch like a side by side, which I love doing, do you know the videos and it shows like they're side by side at the same time of the qualifying lap, and George was behind for a lot of it, and then like it literally in one corner, if you make up a tenth or whatever, it can change the entire lap, because then they were side by side. It was just a nice comparison. I don't know how accurate they are, but I'm not going to question it because I enjoyed watching it. And when George got his pole, he did his, you know, the joke. I'm doing it for the camera if you can see the camera, but if you're listening, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. The pose that he did in the intro when his head was down and his arms were to his side, he did that when he got pole, and that was iconic. I wonder if he was planning on doing that the entire time or if it just came to him in the spur of the moment, but it was really impressive anyway. I love when drivers have their little thing that they do when they get pole. Sargent also, I'll just quickly mention, Sargent P13 should be congratulated. Well done, Sargent. I know he didn't have a great race, or a good race even, but well done on that qualifying. He qualified Perez. Actually, I saw a stat that was Sargent has like outqualified Perez 6 times and outqualified Albon 0 times. Even though I think he did outqualify Albon once actually, because didn't Albon get his time deleted? I feel like that happened. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, he's outqualified Perez more than he's outqualified Albon, which says a lot about Albon. Well done, Logan. You can have that win for this weekend. And then the actual race. Can you believe we haven't even talked about the race yet? Honestly, I looked away for 2 seconds and half the grid were DNF'd, so don't know how that happened. I'm not going to go through the race start to finish because quite frankly I can't remember everything. Like, I've no idea what order all this stuff happened in because there was just so much. It was overwhelming but exciting. It was my favourite race of the season by far this year. Who was the first to DNF? I know Logan crashed and brought out a brief yellow flag, but I think he got back going. Then did he crash again? The way I can't even remember that is ridiculous. I think Logan crashed again and brought out the safety car this time. We'll start at the start actually, because Daniel had a false start, which took me so long to figure out what he actually did, because I was looking at his onboard like, this boy is not moving. What is false start about this? But you can see his tyres moving ever so slightly. It was not a problem on Daniel's end. The team told him it was a problem with his clutch, with the clutch of the car. He had no control over that. He wasn't moving it himself. So that was unfortunate. There was nothing he could have done about that. The problem with that is that we saw Perez have a moving start in Saudi Arabia, was it? And no penalty. And we saw Lando, not a jump start, he had a false start as well. He jumped, stopped, and then went. And you're not allowed to move once the lights are on. When the lights go on, before they go off, you're not allowed to move at all. Both cars moved. They didn't get a penalty because they didn't trigger the sensors. And since then, it has been introduced that the stewards, if the stewards see your car's moving, you get a penalty. And they saw Daniel's car was moving. In the document, they acknowledged that he didn't gain an advantage and that it was like minuscule, like it didn't look on purpose. And therefore, they gave him the smallest penalty they could, which was 5 seconds. But I feel like there's quite an issue in that rule change in the middle of the season. Like, imagine if that was between two title contenders. Imagine Max was in Lando's position, yeah? And Max jumped the start and didn't get a penalty for it. And then, say, this weekend Lando got a penalty for his moving start, or a Ferrari, or whatever it was. There would be uproar about that, but obviously it's Daniel and he's not, fighting for a win. So it sort of went a bit more under the radar. Daniel was moving, so, it makes sense if you're moving to get a penalty. It's a false start. But to just add that in, into the season when people have done that in the season already without getting a penalty can be quite problematic. And I feel like rule changes shouldn't be allowed during the season. But then again, everyone would be jumping their starts then since they let other people away with it. I think they shouldn't have let Lando and Perez away with it, even though it was the rules. They should have gave them 5-second penalty, even though it was quite a big jump start from Lando. They should have gave him a penalty at the time. Obviously nothing to do with Lando or Perez, it's just the FIA. But it is a tricky situation to be in. And yeah, Daniel was confused because he knew he didn't jump start, but it was a problem with his clutch anyway. And when Daniel gets a penalty, he sort of comes alive anyway. And he started 5th. Penalty dropped him behind Stroll and Yuki and everyone. And he finished behind Stroll, which is quite frustrating because he probably would have finished ahead of him without the penalty. So yeah, Logan crashed, brought out the safety car, and then Daniel, that's why that popped into my head, because Daniel could sit his penalty under a safety car, which again, he's quite lucky to be able to do that. So Lando stresses me out with his tyre choices. Obviously not his choice, but when he stays out when everyone else is going in. And then unfortunately Lando got the safety car collected Lando as the leader, which removed his gap. So when he boxed, he was not in the lead of the race anymore. Was it Max in the lead then? Not too sure. George lost the lead as well because he went wide. It was raining for the start of it. They were all on different tyres, so quite a few people were going off. I know Pierre tipped into someone sideways at the start as well. And the Haas at the start. I mean, I knew that it would bite them being on wet tyres, but seeing Magnussen go to P3 or something at the very start I was obsessed with that, and Hulk as well. But once the track dried, they were screwed for the rest of the race basically. So yeah, Logan was the first retirement, I believe. Or did Charles retire before Logan? His power was weak all race, and then he pitted and he had a long pit stop while they were deciding what to do. Then they put him on hards, bad decision, and they boxed him on intermediates, and I don't know, he retired the car anyway. Perez crashed. He sort of spun off and destroyed his rear wing, and he kept driving because they didn't want to cause a safety car because Max, would have affected Max. And because of that, Perez has also been given a 3-place grid penalty for Barcelona, if you missed that. And Perez was obviously out of the race as well. So terrible weekend for Perez, a painful one that he would like to forget ASAP. And then Carlos unfortunately took out Alex. Nothing Alex could have done, he was just pushed into the wall and had to retire. Alex took that very well actually, because I would have been annoyed. And Carlos, like he does, he made sure to apologise to Alex about that. I think he even posted it on some sort of social media, an apology to Alex, which quite a good thing for Carlos to do. But obviously he ruined his own race as well. So I'm sure Alex understood that it wasn't intentional if he was ruining his own race as well, nor would it be intentional because Carlos isn't like that. But that was disappointing because Alex was going really well. He made some great overtakes. Oh my god. The overtake Alex made on Daniel and Ocon. He overtook Daniel on the left and then swooped in and overtook Ocon on the right. That was a masterclass of an overtake. And I saw a few drivers come up and they were they were making the overtake with their hands. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, because that's so iconic from Albon. Unfortunately, his race didn't go well, but he's one to watch out for, obviously. Coming up to the end of the race as well, the RBs were fighting. Daniel was lapping, I think, a second ahead of Yuki. Yuki was struggling. And then Yuki was told that Daniel would be allowed to fight him. And Yuki was like, okay, reset button. He made a second after that. I don't know what happened, but he was not letting Daniel get close to him. And it might have been that. It might have been him making sure to keep Daniel behind him. He just went off. He tried to go around the bollard and he sort of skidded right into the middle of the track, which was so scary because the cars, one of the Haas's did an incredible job at avoiding him, but it's always so scary when a car is like that in the middle of the track, and nothing Yuki could have done about that, unfortunately. A very sad end to Yuki's race because he was going quite strongly. His pace did drop at the end, but before that he was going really strongly. Really impressive from Yuki. And then Daniel got Ocon at the end. Ocon was a little bit slower, and that is when the Ocon and Gasly drama happened again. More drama. Tom and Jerry strike again. Ocon was apparently slower. Well, Ocon was slower and he was told to let Pierre pass so Pierre could try overtake Daniel. They weren't going to overtake Daniel. Daniel was faster than both of the Alpines, and Esteban knew that there was no chance Pierre was going to overtake Ocon. He obviously didn't want to give his point away for no reason. Yeah, Esteban probably had a right to be a little annoyed at that because obviously he just got fired by that team. He's gonna feel a little shady towards them. They don't have trust in him. He knows that. They're not prioritizing him. So, that can be quite difficult, I'm sure. If you get team orders to let your teammate pass, you just need to let your teammate pass and discuss it after. Instead of ruining your teammate's race potentially. Not that Esteban did that, I'm just saying in a general sense. Discuss it afterwards, and disappointing the team because you need to stay on the good side of your team principal and your engineers. Did anything else happen this race? What is nice is seeing Max win a race that he really has to fight for, seeing his overtaking, seeing his pure speed. Max doesn't usually get credit when he actually does really well in a race because people are so used to seeing him win. I think he was definitely driver of the day this race. He had a really strong race start to finish, especially his pace compared to his teammates. So, well done, Max. I feel like we just need to give Max some appreciation every now and again because we're just so used to seeing him winning. It can be, you can forget sometimes to actually that he actually races well, Not a perfect race from Russell. Obviously, he started on pole. He finished P3. First podium for Mercedes this season is not anything to be ashamed about, but he obviously wanted that win. And it was a potential for him to get that win yesterday, which is always going to be frustrating because when Max is running away with it by so much, you're going to be more proud of your P2, P3, but when it's close, like it was with Lando and George, and a few mistakes made with George going off, then it's going to be even more frustrating. Good race. The safety car didn't favour him in this one, but it did in Miami when he got his race win, so he respected that, and that's just how the sport works sometimes. And yeah, George was called to the stewards after with Oscar, but nothing happened there. Oscar as well, strong weekend, faultless, can't really say anything about that. McLaren boys are on to something. While I think of anything else that happened this weekend, I may as well do the riddle of the week. the answer to the riddle of the week this week is Nico Rosberg. I'm sure you knew that. Nico won the world champion in 2016 and retired the same year after he won his championship out of the blue. Surprised everyone. There's a video of him announcing his retirement on YouTube if you want to watch that. Well, yeah, he currently does work with, I mean, I'm sure he does a lot of stuff, but you do see him on Sky sometimes giving his opinions, and he's a great person to have on Sky. Very insightful. He's the son of world champion Keke Rosberg, who won in the 1980s, and he's German, if I haven't mentioned that. He's German and Finnish. He has dual citizenship. So Rosberg joined Mercedes in 2010 and he partnered with Michael Schumacher, later Lewis Hamilton. I'm sure we all know Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg's relationship, friendship, rivalry. He won his first Formula 1 victory in 2012. And yeah, like I said, his rivalry with Hamilton became legendary. It was intense, it was dramatic. Sometimes Rosberg would speak a different language in the cool down room. Like, I think he was speaking some other language to Daniel before that he knew Lewis couldn't understand, which is sort of iconic, to be honest. Yeah, in 2016 he had a brutal battle with Hamilton and he ended up winning the world championship. Rosberg won the world championship, like I said, but he announced his immediate retirement 5 days after he won the championship, and he retired as a champion. Probably not the worst thing to do, because no one knows if, like, a lot of champions have just went so downhill after their win. Not looking at anyone in particular. Yes, that's Nico Rosberg. I wanted to do him because he's such an interesting character in Formula 1. I love seeing him on the broadcast. He always has great insights and great information about everything. He has great opinions. It's quite funny. There's a Nico Rosberg curse where he takes a selfie with a team or a driver in the background and they always do bad. So I'm sure that has been broken by now. Like, he's bound to have taken one with Max that was broken, but I wouldn't be getting in a Rosberg selfie anytime soon if I was a driver. We should do fancy Formula 1. Arthur told me I should do it by the week because that would be more interesting, and I think that's probably true. So I'll do it by the week. And I haven't checked this yet, so I'm excited to see who is on top this week. Okay, ready? Number 1 is Farant Simon. 194 points. His team, Max, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Pierre and Esteban. That's not a bad team for this weekend, to be fair, but on a normal weekend, I mean, actually before Alpine made that jump forward, it wouldn't have been great, but now that's actually not a bad team. And look who's second. HB4 DR3. Hannah is second, 174 points. Let's look at Hannah's team. Daniel got you 9 points this weekend. Lando, Max, Joe Albon. That's a great team, actually, for a weekend where Albon does well. But unfortunately, you got minus 12 because we DNF'd. With Orby and Aston Martin as a constructor. Where did I come? I came 6th. My team, what do you think of my team? My team is Max, Daniel, Yuki, Bottas, Gasly. So I got 0 points for Yuki. I didn't get minus points for Yuki, I just got 0. And my constructors is Red Bull and Orby. I think that's a good team, to be honest. But yeah, keep an eye out because we might have some interviews coming in the next month or two. And guys, I haven't mentioned this episode yet, but I am going to the next race. I will be at the Barcelona Grand Prix, so my insights will be live from there. I would recommend, if you do have TikTok, to follow my TikTok there because I'll be posting regularly every day and before I go and everything like that. But maybe will I record some of my podcasts while I'm there? That might be fun. I mean, I can't bring my microphone, but I'll have my little microphone, It could be fun to record someone up there. Who knows? But yeah, hopefully I'll have a good weekend there. I'm in general admission, so if anyone has any advice about that, please let me know. And I will see you. So I'm only coming back from Barcelona on the Tuesday, so I won't be able to record the full podcast episode before then, but I'll hopefully record it Tuesday evening, have it up for Wednesday or Thursday latest. It'll be one that you won't want to miss, guys. For real. I promise I'll make it a good one. Anyway, thanks for joining me today to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix, and I will see you for the Barcelona Grand Prix. Goodbye.